In the year 2042, the world changed in a single afternoon. It began quietly. No explosions, no sirens, no warnings from satellites or radar. One moment, the sky above Geneva was clear and blue, the kind of calm spring day people took for granted. The next, a shadow fell over the city like a slow-moving cloud. But it wasn't a cloud, it was a ship. Black as midnight, smooth as glass, and shaped like a teardrop turned on its side. It hung in the air without sound or smoke. It didn't wobble. It didn't drift. It simply was, suspended 300 meters above the United Nations headquarters, as if gravity had politely stepped aside. People stopped in the streets. Cars slowed to a halt. Tourists dropped their cameras. Even the birds fell silent. Inside the UN building, diplomats froze mid-sentence. Security guards stared up through the glass ceiling, hands hovering near their radios. No one knew what to do. No one had ever trained for this. Within minutes, every military in the world scrambled jets, activated missile systems, and called emergency war rooms into session. But nothing worked as it should. Radar screens flickered and went blank. Satellite links failed. Fighter pilots reported their targeting systems locking onto empty sky, then resetting over and over. It was as if the ship refused to be seen by machines, only by human eyes. Then a voice spoke, not over loudspeakers, not through radios. It came directly into the minds of everyone within a 5-kilometer radius, clear, calm, and strangely gentle. "I come in peace," it said. A single figure stepped out of the ship. It floated down slowly as if walking on invisible stairs, tall, slender, wrapped in armor that shimmered like oil on water. It landed softly on the marble steps of the UN building. Its face was smooth, with large eyes the color of polished silver and no visible mouth. Yet the voice continued, now spoken aloud in perfect English with a tone that felt both ancient and kind. "I am Kalen," it said, "envoy of the Galactic Concordance." Crowds gathered behind police lines, phones raised, hearts pounding. News helicopters circled far away, ordered to keep distance, but their cameras zoomed in tightly. Within seconds, the image of Kalen was beamed to every screen on Earth. Televisions, tablets, smartwatches, even digital billboards in Tokyo, Nairobi, and Sao Paulo. Kalen did not raise its hands. It did not threaten. It simply stood waiting. After a long silence, the UN Secretary-General, Dr. Amara Nkosi, stepped forward. She was a woman known for her steady voice and sharp mind, but now her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her glasses. "Welcome to Earth," she said. "What is your purpose here?" Kalen tilted its head as if considering the question carefully. "For many centuries," it began, "we have watched your world. We have seen your wars, your art, your science, your kindness, and your cruelty. You are young, loud, full of fire, and now you are reaching beyond your cradle." It paused. The wind stirred the trees around the plaza. "You have placed machines on your moon. You have sent people to live on Mars. You drill into asteroids for metals you do not yet need. To the Concordance, this is not progress. It is noise." "Dangerous noise," Dr. Nkosi swallowed. "We mean no harm. We only seek to explore, to learn." Kalen's silver eyes seemed to soften. "And that is why I am here. Not to destroy, not to punish, but to guide." It raised one long-fingered hand, and a small sphere of light appeared above its palm. The light grew, forming a map of the solar system. Earth at the center, with glowing red lines marking human outposts on the Moon, Mars, and near-Earth asteroids. "The Concordance has ruled for 10,000 years, Kalen said. "We keep peace among hundreds of worlds. We do not allow unchecked expansion. It leads to war, to ruin, to species that burn themselves out before they learn wisdom." Then came the request, delivered not as a demand but as a polite suggestion. "Cease all off-world activity. Recall your people from Mars, dismantle your orbital stations, sign the Treaty of Quiet Growth. In return, the Concordance will share knowledge, clean energy, medicine, ways to heal your oceans and skies. You will join a greater family. You will be protected." The world held its breath. In Washington, generals argued in hushed tones about launching a nuclear strike. In Beijing, scientists debated whether the ship was real or a hologram. In Nairobi, children asked their teachers if aliens were like in the movies. In Rio, musicians played songs of hope and fear beneath the stars, but Earth's leaders chose caution. Over the next 48 hours, emergency summits were held. Video calls connected presidents, prime ministers, and council leaders across time zones. Fear was high, but so was reason. No one wanted to provoke a being that could appear over Geneva without warning and shut down global defense systems with a thought. So they agreed to talk. Dr. Nkosi stood before the world's cameras and said, "Earth welcomes dialogue. We respect your wisdom. We will consider your offer with care." Kalen nodded as if expecting nothing less. "We understand your caution," it said. "Take your time. But know this, the Concordance does not ask twice." Then it turned and walked back toward the ship. The black vessel opened silently and Kalen stepped inside. Moments later, it rose straight up, no sound, no exhaust, and vanished into the upper atmosphere, leaving only a faint ripple in the air. Like a stone dropped in still water, the world exhaled. In the days that followed, life returned to a strange new normal. Schools reopened. Markets traded. But everything felt different. People looked up at the sky more often. Parents hugged their children tighter. Scientists worked overtime trying to understand what had happened and what might come next. Governments issued calm statements. "We are in peaceful talks," they said. "There is no danger." But behind closed doors, panic simmered. What if the Concordance lost patience? What if protected meant controlled? What if Earth had just been given an ultimatum wrapped in silk? Yet publicly Earth smiled. Earth bowed. Earth said thank you and we understand. And we will comply. Because that was the smart thing to do. Because survival sometimes wears the mask of politeness. Because no one knew what the Concordance could really do. And because deep down, in secret bunkers and hidden labs and encrypted chats and midnight meetings, a different kind of work had already begun. Not of surrender, but of preparation. But for now, the world played its part. It was courteous, it was quiet. It was waiting. And Kalen, watching from a silent ship parked just beyond the moon, believed every word. For 6 months, Earth behaved. No new rockets launched. The Mars colony stopped sending expansion plans. The mining drones near the asteroid belt powered down. Even the small research station on the moon went quiet. Its crew instructed to observe only, build nothing. To the galactic Concordance, it looked like Earth had listened. It looked like Earth had learned. Kalen returned once a month, always appearing over Geneva, always calm, always polite. Each time, Earth's leaders greeted the envoy with smiles, reports, and promises. They shared weather data, crop yields, even poetry, anything to show they were peaceful, orderly, and grateful for the Concordance's guidance. But beneath the surface, Earth was not still. In hidden places, deep under mountains, inside old Cold War bunkers, beneath Antarctic ice, a different kind of work moved forward. It had a name, Project Aegis. Few knew about it. Those who did never spoke its name aloud. They called it the Shield or the Plan or simply Tomorrow. Project Aegis was not about weapons. Not at first. It was about understanding. For decades, governments had collected strange objects, metal fragments that healed themselves, crystals that hummed without power, black boxes that recorded thoughts instead of data. Most came from places like Roswell, or from deep-sea trenches where ships had vanished. Scientists had studied them in secret, learning little, but now with the Concordance watching, they studied harder. In a lab under Greenland's ice sheet, Dr. Elena Rostova led a team of physicists, linguists, and AI engineers. She was small, with tired eyes and hands that never stopped moving. She had lost her brother in the first Mars dust storm years ago, and she carried that loss like a stone in her chest. To her, Project Aegis wasn't about war. It was about making sure no one, human or alien, could ever decide Earth's fate without asking its people. Her team's biggest breakthrough came from a simple idea. If the Concordance communicated through thought, maybe Earth could learn to speak that way too. They built a network of machines called nodes. Each node was no bigger than a shoebox, filled with quantum circuits and biosynthetic wires grown from algae and spider silk. These nodes didn't run on electricity alone. They used a mix of solar power, geothermal heat, and something stranger, human brainwaves. Volunteers, teachers, farmers, artists, soldiers sat quietly for hours thinking of peace, of home, of resistance. Their thoughts were recorded not as words, but as patterns of light and sound. Slowly, the nodes began to talk to each other. Not with signals, but with silence that carried meaning. like how a mother knows her child is sad just by the way they breathe. This network became known as the Chorus. Meanwhile, world leaders kept playing their part. They held press conferences praising the wisdom of the stars. They canceled space programs publicly, while quietly rerouting funds to underground labs. They let Kaylin inspect empty launch pads and silent control rooms, all staged like museum exhibits. But Kaylin was not fooled forever. During its 5th visit, the envoy lingered longer than usual. It walked slowly through the UN gardens, its silver eyes scanning the trees, the birds, the people. Then it stopped and turned to Dr. Nkosi. "You are hiding something," it said, not angrily but with quiet certainty. Dr. Nkosi smiled. "We hide nothing. We are simply learning to be still." Kaylin tilted its head. "Stillness is good. But silence can be a weapon." That night, alarms rang in bunkers across the globe. Concordance drones, small insect-like machines no one had seen before, began appearing near known research sites. One was found hovering over a data center in Iceland. Another was spotted near a deep-sea cable off the coast of Chile. They didn't attack. They just watched, listened, recorded. Project Aegis went darker. All communication switched to handwritten notes. No digital files. No radio waves. Teams moved locations weekly. Some scientists shaved their heads to avoid brainwave detection. Others lived in Faraday cages, rooms lined with metal that blocked all signals. In Tokyo, a retired engineer named Hiroshi built a signal jammer from old microwave parts and bicycle batteries. In Nairobi, a group of students created a code using drum beats and bird calls to pass messages between villages. In Buenos Aires, a grandmother taught her grandchildren to memorize star maps, not for navigation, but to remember what freedom looked like. Earth was learning to whisper. Back in Geneva, Kaylin grew colder. Its visits became shorter. Its voice lost its warmth. "You speak of peace," it told the UN Council, "but your hearts beat faster when I am near. Your hands clench. Your eyes dart. You fear me. That is unwise." Dr. Nkosi stood tall. "We do not fear you. We respect you." Kaylin stared at her for a long time. Then it said, "Respect without truth is empty." It left without another word. 2 weeks later, the first strike came, not with fire, but with silence. All contact with the Mars colony was lost, not destroyed. Not attacked, just gone. No distress calls. No explosions. When Earth's telescopes focused on the red planet, the domes were intact. Lights still glowed inside, but the cameras showed people standing motionless in hallways, staring at walls, eyes open but empty. Like statues with breath, the same happened to the lunar base. The orbital stations, even the small weather drone near Jupiter, stopped transmitting. Earth's leaders demanded answers. Kaylin returned within hours. The off-world settlements were unauthorized, it said simply. "They have been pacified." "What does that mean?" Dr. Nkosi asked, her voice shaking. "It means they are safe, calm, no longer a threat to cosmic order." "But they're our people," someone shouted from the council floor. Kaylin turned its silver eyes toward the voice. "They were acting beyond your treaty. We corrected the error. You should thank us." The room fell silent. Outside, riots began. In cities across the world, people poured into the streets. They held photos of lost astronauts, miners, scientists, friends, family, heroes. They chanted, "Bring them home," and "We are not yours to fix." Police tried to calm the crowds, but even the officers looked angry. For the first time, Earth's courtesy cracked, yet the leaders still held back. Not out of fear, but strategy, because in that same hour, deep beneath the ice of Antarctica, Dr. Rostova activated the chorus. The nodes hummed to life, not with sound, but with a pulse that traveled through rock, water, and air. It carried no words, only feeling, grief for the lost, anger at the injustice, and a quiet, unbreakable will to protect what remained. The chorus did not send a message to Kaylin. It sent one to Earth. And for the first time in months, people stopped feeling alone. In a village in Nepal, a child woke from a nightmare and felt calm for no reason. In a hospital in Cairo, a dying man smiled as if hearing a song only he could hear. In a prison in Brazil, a man who hadn't spoken in years whispered, "We're still here." The concordance had taken their bodies, but not their spirit, and Earth began to remember its strength, not in guns or bombs, but in unity. In the weeks that followed, the surface remained calm. Governments issued statements of deep concern but continued cooperation. Kalen seemed satisfied. It even praised Earth's maturity. But underground, in forests, in deserts, in ocean labs, and mountain caves, people prepared. They didn't build weapons, they built trust. They didn't plan attacks. They planned to speak, as one voice, because they knew now. The Concordance feared noise, but it feared truth even more, and Earth had a truth to tell. It would not be courteous, forever. It would be kind. It would be wise. But it would also be free. And that freedom would not be given. It would be claimed quietly together. With every heartbeat, every breath, every silent thought passed from one human to the next. The world was still playing its part. But the real story was no longer on the surface. It was in the roots. And roots, once deep enough, cannot be pulled. The silence after the pacification lasted 17 days. 17 days of empty comms, of staring at screens that showed nothing but still faces on Mars, unmoving hands on the moon, quiet corridors in orbit. 17 days of parents crying in kitchens, of children asking why Aunt Lena wasn't answering her video call, of engineers sitting in dark rooms, replaying the last normal transmission over and over like a prayer. The world grieved in private. In public, it stayed calm. Too calm, Kalen watched. It saw the lowered flags, the quiet memorials, the lack of protests. It believed Earth had finally accepted its place, that the lesson had been learned, but Earth was not broken. It was boiling. Deep in the Mariana Trench, inside a pressure-proof lab shaped like a whale, a team of oceanographers and signal experts worked around the clock. They called their station Whisper Deep, no metal hull. No radio waves, just thick layers of bioplastic grown from kelp and powered by thermal vents. Here they connected the final node of the chorus to the ocean floor, a living wire made of coral and copper, humming with the pulse of human thought. In Greenland, Dr. Elena Rostova stood before a wall of light. Each point of light was a person, somewhere on Earth, thinking the same thing at the same time. We remember. We resist. We are here. The chorus was no longer just a network. It was becoming a voice, but it needed a spark. That spark came from an unexpected place. Mateo Cruz was not a general, not a scientist. He was 32, born in a flooded coastal town in the Philippines that no longer existed on maps. He'd grown up in refugee camps, learned 6 languages by necessity, and once walked 300 miles to find clean water for his sister. Now he worked as a cultural liaison for the UN, a quiet job, mostly translating old folk songs and peace poems for diplomatic events. But Mateo had seen what the Concordance did. He'd watched the footage of his friend Lena, a botanist on Mars standing frozen in a greenhouse, hands on a tomato plant that would never ripen. He'd heard the silence in her eyes. He went to Dr. Nkosi. "We can't keep bowing," he said. "They took our people. Not killed them, worse. They erased their will. If we stay quiet, they'll do it to all of us, one city at a time." Dr. Nkosi looked tired. "What do you suggest, Mateo? War? We can't win a war." "No," he said. "Not war." A message, and so the plan began. Not with guns. Not with threats. With truth. The chorus would speak. Not to Kalen, but to the galaxy. For weeks, volunteers recorded sounds. Not speeches. Not demands. Just life. A baby's first laugh in Nairobi. An old man singing a lullaby in key of rain on a tin roof in Bangladesh. A street musician playing a broken guitar in Rio Amok. Chanting in a Himalayan monastery. A teacher reading a story to children in Detroit. A fisherman humming as he mended his net in Senegal. They collected voices in every language, even ones with only a few speakers left. They recorded whale songs, wolf howls, the buzz of bees, the rustle of wheat fields. They added data too, not numbers, but meaning. The DNA of a redwood tree, the pattern of a snowflake, the rhythm of a healthy heartbeat, the code of a vaccine that saved millions. All of it was woven into a single pulse, 17 seconds long. 17 seconds for 17 days of silence. The hardest part was sending it. The Concordance controlled all known space channels. But Earth had one advantage: it knew how to hide in plain sight. Years ago, during the early days of satellite TV, engineers had built backup signal paths, old microwave relays, undersea cables, even ham radio frequencies meant for emergencies. Most were forgotten, but not by everyone. In Iceland, a retired telecom worker named Gudrun remembered the ghost lines. She and her grandchildren spent nights rewiring abandoned towers, linking them to Whisper Deep. In Mongolia, nomadic herders used solar-powered transmitters hidden in yurts to bounce signals off the ionosphere. In the Amazon, indigenous communities used drums and flutes to send coded pulses that matched the chorus's rhythm, confusing any drone that might be listening. On the night of the broadcast, the world held its breath. No one announced it. No countdown. Just a quiet agreement among thousands at exactly 3 a.m. Geneva time. Every hidden node would send the pulse at once. Kalen was aboard its ship, reviewing Earth's latest compliance report when the signal hit. It didn't come through official channels. It burst through everything: old TV bands, emergency beacons, even the static between radio stations. For 17 seconds, the entire planet sang. Kalen froze. Its silver eyes widened. Its smooth face twitched, something no human had ever seen before, because the message wasn't hostile. It wasn't angry. It was beautiful and overwhelming. It showed not just what humans did, but what they were: messy, creative, grieving, loving, stubborn, kind. It showed a species that built bombs and hospitals with the same hands, that wrote laws and poems in the same heart. When the pulse ended, silence returned, but everything had changed. Kalen demanded an emergency meeting. The next morning, it stood before the UN Council, its voice sharper than ever. "What was that signal?" it asked. Dr. Nkosi looked at Matteo, who stepped forward. "That," he said, "was our courtesy." Kalen tilted its head. "Courtesy?" "Yes," Matteo said. "We showed you our soul. Not to beg, not to threaten, just to say this is who we are, and we will not be erased." Kalen was silent for a long time. Then it said, "You risked everything for a song?" "No," Matteo replied. "We risked everything to remind you and ourselves that we are more than your rules." That night, the Concordance ship left orbit, but it didn't go far. It parked near the moon and watched. Earth waited. Then, 3 days later, the real strike came. Not on cities. Not on governments, on hope. A new broadcast appeared on every screen on Earth. Forced through. Impossible to block. It showed the Mars colony again. But this time the people moved. Slowly, robotically, they stood in lines. They looked into cameras. And one by one, they spoke. "I am safe," said Lena, her voice flat. Her eyes empty. "I am calm," said a former pilot, smiling without joy. "We thank the Concordance," said a child who had been born on Mars. The message was clear. "We are happy now. Stop fighting for us," millions wept. Some believed it. Others knew it was a lie, a puppet show with their loved ones as dolls. Riots nearly broke out. But then something unexpected happened. In Jakarta, a street artist painted a mural of Lena, not frozen, but laughing, holding a tomato like a trophy. In Oslo, a choir sang the lullaby from the pulse, "Live on every radio station." In Mexico City, families left candles outside space agency offices, not in mourning, but in defiance. The chorus pulsed again, not as a broadcast, but as a feeling. A quiet knowing. They are not gone. They are waiting. And Earth understood. The Concordance hadn't won. It was afraid. Because for the first time, a young species had not begged for mercy. It had offered a gift, and in that gift shown its strength. Matteo stood on a rooftop in Geneva looking up at the stars. He knew what came next. The Concordance would either crush them or listen. But Earth had already made its choice. It would not hide. It would not break. And it would never again mistake. Silence for peace. The warning had been sent. Now, the galaxy would have to answer. The Concordance did not return for 28 days. 28 days of waiting, of watching the skies, of listening to the silence where Mars voices used to be. People began to wonder if the aliens had left for good. Maybe the song had worked. Maybe they finally understood. But Matteo Cruz knew better. He sat in a small room beneath the UN building, not as a diplomat, but as a voice for something older than governments. Around him were people from every corner of Earth. A Maasai elder from Kenya, a teenage coder from Seoul, a fisherwoman from the Maldives, a former soldier from Colombia, and Dr. Elena Rostova, her eyes tired but bright. They were the Global Council of Voices, formed in secret, approved by no nation but trusted by millions. They had one rule: every decision must be made together. No votes, no leaders, just listening until everyone agreed. And now they all agreed on one thing: when Kaylin came back, and it would come back, they would not beg. They would not hide. They would speak, not with fear, with warning. On the 29th day, the black ship returned. It did not hover over Geneva this time. It stopped directly above the UN Plaza, lower than before, casting a long shadow that swallowed the flags of every nation. The air grew cold. Birds fled. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Kaylin stepped out alone. No shimmer. No calm voice in minds. It walked down the steps like a judge entering a courtroom. Its silver eyes scanned the crowd behind the barricades, then fixed on the UN doors. Dr. Nkosi came out first, as expected. But she did not stand at the front. She stepped aside, and Mateo Cruz walked forward. He wore simple clothes, jeans, a cotton shirt, no badge, no title. In his hand he held nothing. No papers, no weapon. Just his voice. Kaylin studied him. "You are not in charge," it said. "No," Mateo replied. "But I speak for those who are." "For the leaders?" "No," Mateo said. "For the people." A murmur rose from the crowd. This was not the script. Earth was supposed to apologize, to promise better behavior, to stay small. Kaylin's voice grew colder. "Your signal was a mistake. It caused unrest among other worlds. Some species began to question the concordance." "That is dangerous," Mateo nodded. "Good." Kaylin paused. "You wanted chaos?" "No," Mateo said. "We wanted truth. You told us we were noisy, so we showed you what our noise really is. Not just rockets and mines, but laughter, grief, songs, questions. That is who we are, and you cannot silence it without killing us." Kaylin stood very still. "You think you are special? You are not. We have seen thousands like you. Most burn out. Some submit. None survive defiance. Then why are you still here?" Mateo asked. The question hung in the air. Kaylin did not answer. Mateo turned slightly and looked at the people behind him. The old woman from the Arctic, who remembered ice that never melted. The boy from Lagos who built radios from trash. The nurse from Santiago who held dying strangers in her arms. He saw their faces, not on screens, but right there in the flesh, watching, waiting, trusting. Then he turned back to Kaylin. "We were only being courteous," he said. "Until now." He raised his hand, not in threat but in gesture. Behind him, on every screen in the plaza, in every phone nearby, in every public display from Oslo to Cape Town, an image appeared. It was not a weapon, it was a switch, and it was being turned off one by one. Across the planet, Earth's weapons went silent. Nuclear silos powered down. Missile guidance systems shut off. Drone fleets landed and locked their rotors. Even the old tanks in museums had their batteries removed. Satellites that once carried warheads now floated empty, harmless. The world watched in shock. Kaylin's head tilted. "What is this?" "A warning," Mateo said. "You disarm." "As a threat?" "Yes," Mateo said. "Because you think power is only in weapons. But real power is in choice. We chose to build those weapons. And now we choose to turn them off, not because we are weak, but because we do not need them to stand tall." He stepped closer. "Harm one more human. Touch one child. Silence one more voice, and you will learn what Earth truly is." Kaylin's voice dropped to a whisper. "And what is that?" "A species that has survived ice ages," Mateo said. "That walked out of caves and built cities. That lost everything in plagues and wars and still planted seeds the next spring. We are not strong because we can destroy. We are strong because we keep choosing to create. Even when it's hard. Even when we're afraid," he pointed to the sky. "You think you control the galaxy. But you forgot one thing." "What?" "Life does not ask for permission to grow." At that moment, the chorus pulsed, not as a broadcast but as a feeling that passed through every human in the plaza. A warmth, a memory, a shared breath. People reached for each other's hands. Strangers hugged. Tears fell, not from fear but from pride. Kaylin took a step back. For the first time, its silver eyes showed something new. Not anger, not pity, but doubt. It looked at the unarmed crowd, at the empty missile silos, at the faces that did not look away. Then it spoke, slowly. "You would rather die than obey. No, Mateo said. We would rather live on our own terms. Kalen was silent for a long time. The wind picked up, rustling the flags that now hung limp without the ship's shadow. Finally it said, "The Concordance does not bargain with children." "This isn't a bargain," Mateo replied. "It's an invitation. Join us as equals, or leave us in peace. But do not pretend to protect us while stealing our future." Kalen turned and walked back to the ship, but before it entered, it stopped. "You have changed," it said. "No," Mateo said. "We remembered who we were." The ship rose into the sky and vanished. That night, the world did not celebrate, it gathered. In villages and cities, people lit candles not for mourning but for remembrance. They shared food with neighbors. They told stories to children about courage that wears no uniform. In schools, teachers spoke of the day Earth chose dignity over fear. Deep in Antarctica, Dr. Rostova watched the data flow through the chorus. It was stronger now, not just a network but a heartbeat, and far beyond the moon, Kalen sat alone in its ship, replaying the 17-second pulse over and over. It had come to teach a lesson. Instead, it had learned one. Earth was not a problem to be fixed, it was a mirror. And in that mirror, the Concordance saw something it had long forgotten, that true strength does not crush, it listens. But the story was not over, because somewhere, in the dark between stars, other voices had heard Earth's song, and they were answering, not with ships, with hope. Mateo stood on his rooftop again. Looking up, he knew the Concordance would return, but next time, it would not come as a master. It would come as a guest, and Earth would be ready, not with weapons, but with open eyes, open hearts, and a warning that echoed across the stars. We were only being courteous. Until now. The Concordance did not return for 40 days. 40 days of quiet skies. No black ships. No silver-eyed envoys. No forced broadcasts from Mars. The world waited, but it did not stop living. Farmers planted seeds. Children went to school. Artists painted murals of Earth wrapped in starlight, not chains. In every country, people spoke more openly, not just about aliens, but about justice, about sharing, about what kind of future they wanted. Deep underground and far beneath the sea, Project Aegis did not shut down. It changed. The weapons stayed off. The nodes of the chorus now carried songs, stories, and lessons, not just for defense, but for connection. Scientists shared cures for old diseases. Engineers taught villages how to build clean water systems from scrap. The network became a gift, not a shield. Then, on the 41st day, the sky spoke. Not with one voice, but many. Strange signals began arriving, not from the Concordance, but from places no human telescope had ever focused on. Faint pulses, coded in rhythms that matched Earth's own heartbeat. At first, scientists thought it was noise, but Dr. Elena Rostova recognized it. "They're answering us," she whispered. The signals came from 12 different star systems. Some were simple, a repeating tone like a knock on a door. Others were rich with sound. Music made of wind and metal, voices that clicked and hummed, images built from light patterns. One message showed a planet covered in tall, swaying trees that sang when the wind blew. Another showed beings with skin like stone, tending gardens of glowing mushrooms. All of them carried the same idea. "We heard you. We are like you." And then came the warning. One signal, stronger than the rest, showed a dark shape moving through space, a ship far larger than Kalen's, covered in spikes and scars. It did not speak. It only destroyed. Planets went dark after it passed. The message was clear. The Concordance is not the only power, and it is not always kind. Earth's Global Council of Voices met again. This time they included not just humans, but AI minds trained on every culture, and even recordings of voices from the pacified colonies, faint echoes pulled from old data streams. They listened for 3 days, then they made a choice. When Kalen returned, it did not come alone. 2 ships floated above Geneva this time, the familiar black teardrop and a larger silver vessel shaped like a ring. Kalen stepped out as before, but its posture was different, less proud, more tired. It walked to the UN steps and waited. Mateo Cruz came out, but he was not alone. Beside him stood the Maasai elder, the soul coder, the Maldives fisherwoman, the Colombian soldier, and Dr. Nkosi. Behind them stood hundreds, teachers, nurses, farmers, students holding hands not in protest, but in unity. Kalen looked at them and said, "You were right." No one spoke. They waited. "The concordance is not what it claims to be," Kalen continued. "It keeps order, yes, but it also it silences young voices so older ones do not feel threatened. Your broadcast, it woke others. Revolts have begun on 3 worlds. The council is divided," Mateo nodded. "We never wanted war. We only wanted to be heard." Kalen stepped closer. "Then hear this. The concordance offers a new treaty. Full recognition of Earth as a free world. Open sharing of knowledge, energy, medicine, star travel. Joint patrols against true threats like the Devourer ship you saw in the signals." A murmur rose from the crowd. Hope, but also caution. Mateo looked at the people beside him. They nodded. Then he turned back to Kalen. "We will accept, but with one condition." Kalen tilted its head. "Name it." "All decisions about Earth must be made by Earth," Mateo said. "Not just governments, not just scientists, but everyone. The old and the young, the quiet and the loud. Even the AIs that help us think. And every voice must agree before we say yes." Kalen was silent for a long time. "That is unusual, slow, messy," Mateo smiled. "Yes, it is. But it is ours." To everyone's surprise, Kalen bowed its head slightly. "The concordance accepts," but Mateo wasn't finished. "We also ask for our people back," he said. "The ones on Mars, the moon, all of them." Kalen hesitated. "The pacification cannot be undone easily. Their minds were stilled to prevent chaos. Then teach us how to wake them," Mateo said. "Not as masters. As partners." Again, Kalen paused. Then it said, "We will try." In the weeks that followed, the world changed again, but this time gently. Concordance ships landed not as rulers, but as guests. They brought clean fusion cores that powered whole cities without smoke. They showed doctors how to heal nerve damage with light. In return, Earth shared its art, its food, its stories of survival. Humans taught aliens how to dance. Aliens taught humans how to listen to the songs of distant stars. On Mars, a team of Earth and Concordance healers worked together. They used sound, memory, and the chorus to reach the frozen minds. One by one, the colonists blinked. They cried. They hugged. Lena, the botanist, picked up her tomato plant and whispered, "I missed you." Back on Earth, the Global Council became permanent. It met in open fields online under trees, never in closed rooms. Every major choice, whether to mine an asteroid, whether to welcome new alien visitors, was discussed by all. Sometimes it took days, sometimes weeks, but the answers were always stronger. The galaxy watched in wonder. A species once called noisy and young had done what no other world had dared. It had said no to control, and yes to shared freedom. Years later, children would learn about this time not as a war, but as the Great Listening. They would be taught that power is not in silence, but in speaking your truth and in hearing others. Kalen stayed on Earth, not as an envoy, but as a student. It walked in forests, tasted rain, sat with elders, and learned to laugh. It even planted a tree in Geneva, a sapling from its own world, now growing in Earth's soil, and every night the chorus still pulsed not as a weapon, but as a lullaby for the planet. It carried the sound of waves, of crickets, of a mother singing, of wind through wheat. It carried the warning, too, but softly now, like a promise we were only being courteous. Until now. But now we are awake, and we will protect not just ourselves, but every voice that dares to sing in the dark. Far beyond the stars, other worlds heard that song, and for the first time in a long time, the galaxy felt less like a kingdom and more like a home.